He never planned to stop his car that evening. The road was quiet, the forest shadows long, and his thoughts lost in the routine of another ordinary day. But a single moment changed everything. A woman appeared on the side of the road, silently raising her hand for help, before vanishing into the woods. Following her led Elias to something he could never have imagined, a little girl, frightened and alone, who carried the last name of one of the wealthiest families in the city. What began as a strange encounter soon unfolded into a story of rescue, reunion, and revelation. A father's desperate tears, a child's safe return, and a painting that held a truth too powerful to ignore. Stay with me, because this is not just the story of saving a lost girl. It's about how a single choice can change lives forever. The dirt road stretched quietly between tall trees and manicured hedges, the kind that marked the border of the luxury estates on the outskirts of the city. The sun was beginning its slow descent, spreading copper light across the gravel. Elias drove alone, as he often did after finishing deliveries, preferring these back roads to the crowded highways. The radio murmured jazz and local ads, but his mind was elsewhere. Elias was a painter at heart, though survival forced him into odd jobs. He dreamed of colors, canvases, and light, but his reality was cardboard boxes and second-hand furniture deliveries. That was when he saw her. At the side of the road stood a woman, pale as moonlight, raising one hand as if asking for help. Elias slowed down, hesitant at first. She didn't look like someone out for a stroll. Something in her posture, fragile, desperate, pulled him out of his hesitation. He parked a few meters ahead and stepped out of the car. "Are you all right?" he called, walking cautiously toward her. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she turned and ran into the woods with surprising speed. Elias's instinct overcame his doubt, and he followed. Dry leaves cracked under his shoes as he pushed through branches, chasing the fleeting figure. She seemed almost to float through the trees, her light dress never catching on the undergrowth. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. By the roots of an old oak tree, the forest was silent again. No footsteps, no trace of anyone, only the stillness of the woods. Elias caught his breath, frowning. Had he imagined it? He was about to turn back when he heard it, a faint sound, soft and broken. A child's muffled sob. He turned and saw her, a little girl, no more than 7, sitting on the ground with her knees pulled tight against her chest. Her stockings were dirty, her hair tangled, her eyes wide and wet. She looked at him not with fear, but with relief, like someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. "Hey," Elias said gently, kneeling so he wouldn't tower over her. "Are you hurt?" The girl shook her head. I got lost," she whispered. Her English was small and trembling. "My dog ran away. I followed him. Then I couldn't find the way back." Elias glanced around, searching for any sign of the dog or the mysterious woman. There was nothing, just the girl, vulnerable and exhausted. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lily Whitaker." The surname hit Elias like a key turning in a lock. He had heard it before: wealth, estates, big houses with windows taller than doors. The name belonged here, in this place of guarded entrances and sprawling lawns. "All right, Lily," Elias said, offering his hand with a reassuring smile. "I'm Elias. I have my car right outside the woods. Let's get you home." She looked at him with wide eyes, then carefully took his hand. As they walked, she glanced back once, toward the old oak tree. Elias followed her gaze, half expecting to see the pale woman again. But the space between the trunks was empty, save for streaks of fading sunlight. By the time they stepped out of the forest, the sky was already leaning toward dusk. Elias opened the passenger door of his old car, helped Lily climb in, and made sure the seatbelt clicked securely. Before getting behind the wheel, he cast one last look at the woods. Still nothing. The woman was gone, as if she had only existed for that one purpose, to lead him to the girl. The gated entrance of the luxury estate loomed ahead within minutes. 2 guards at the booth straightened as Elias pulled up, suspicion flashing in their eyes. He lowered the window and spoke carefully. "I found this girl in the woods. Her name is Lily Whitaker. She said she lives here. The guards exchanged looks, then leaned down to see Lily. Recognition softened their faces instantly. One reached for his radio, his voice breaking the usual monotone of procedure. Confirming, Whitaker child located. She's safe. Repeat, she's safe. The gate arm shot up without hesitation. Elias drove slowly, following the directions given, past wide lawns and houses that looked more like galleries than homes. Lily pointed with her small hand, her face lighting up with the recognition of her street. That one, she whispered. That's my house. Before Elias could stop the car completely, the front door burst open. A tall man in a wrinkled shirt, tie hanging loose, rushed out like someone who had been holding his breath for days. His shoes were barely tied, his eyes swollen and frantic. The moment he saw Lily in the passenger seat, his stride broke into a run. "Lily," he cried, voice cracking as he reached the car and pulled the door open. He scooped her up with both arms, holding her so tightly Elias thought he might crush her. But the girl melted into the embrace, burying her face into his chest. "Daddy," she murmured, voice muffled against him. "I'm okay. I'm okay." Jonathan Whitaker, Elias now knew without introduction, closed his eyes, tears streaming freely down his face. He rocked his daughter in his arms like a man trying to convince himself she was real. For a moment, time hung suspended on the driveway of that mansion, everything silent except the uneven rhythm of a father's sobs and a child's soft reassurance. Finally, Jonathan turned, eyes landing on Elias. Gratitude, disbelief, and raw emotion fought for space in his expression. You brought her back," he said hoarsely. Elias shifted uncomfortably. "I found her in the woods. She was alone. I just did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," Jonathan whispered, shaking his head. "Not anyone." With one hand still clutching Lily, he pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed quickly. His voice steadied only enough to get the words out. "Cancel the search. She's home. She's safe. Yes, safe." Then he ended the call, pulling Lily even closer, as though he feared she might vanish again. "Daddy." Lily's small voice rose. "What about Max?" Jonathan drew a shaky breath, then smiled through his tears. "Max came back too. He's inside waiting for you." At the sound of her dog's name, Lily's eyes lit up, and she wriggled until Jonathan set her down. She darted through the open front door, the golden retriever bounding into view almost immediately, tail wagging furiously. The sound of Lily's laughter echoed back, clear and alive. Jonathan turned again to Elias, running a hand across his face. He looked both broken and reborn, a man undone and rebuilt in the span of minutes. "Please," he said, motioning toward the house. "Come inside. I need to thank you properly. Just a cup of coffee, at least." Elias hesitated, glancing at his dusty car, at his worn sneakers. He didn't belong in a place like this. But Jonathan's expression left no room for refusal. Reluctantly, he nodded. Inside, the house was vast, filled with a curated weight of wealth. Polished wood floors, tall windows, furniture arranged as though by design rather than comfort. Yet despite its grandeur, it felt strangely human tonight, filled with the sounds of Lily's voice and Max's paws on the floor. The air vibrated with relief. A housekeeper appeared briefly, eyes wet, whispering thanks to Elias before disappearing again. Jonathan led him down a hall and opened the door to what was clearly his private office. The room smelled of leather and old books, lined with shelves and heavy furniture. Diplomas and awards filled one wall, but it was a single painting above the desk that froze Elias in place. It was her, the woman from the roadside, rendered in soft, careful brushstrokes. Pale skin, calm eyes, a light dress that seemed to shift in the painted air. The resemblance was undeniable. Elias felt his stomach drop, his hands going cold. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Jonathan followed his gaze and smiled faintly, though grief flickered beneath it. "Beautiful, isn't she? That's Emily, my wife, Lily's mother." His voice caught. "She passed away 3 years ago." Elias's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to confess, to tell this man that his wife had been the one who guided him into the woods. But something held him back. The weight of the revelation, the fear of reopening a wound, the need to protect the fragile peace just restored. It silenced him. He nodded instead, his voice low. "She looks radiant." Jonathan sat heavily in his chair, looking at the painting with a kind of reverence that belonged more to prayer than memory. She was. She still is, in a way. Emily, she was the soul of this family. Losing her nearly destroyed us. And today, his voice cracked again. Today I thought I'd lost Lily too. The silence that followed was heavy, but not empty. Elias felt the truth pressing against his ribs, but he let it rest there, unspoken. Some truths, he decided, were better left as quiet miracles. Jonathan cleared his throat, regaining composure. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out an envelope, thick and heavy. He slid it across the polished wood. "This isn't charity," he said firmly. "It's gratitude. You saved my daughter. I can never repay that, but I can give you this. Take it. Do something with it that matters to you." Elias looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it yet. "I didn't do this for a reward." "I know," Jonathan replied. "That's why you deserve it." Elias hesitated before finally reaching for the envelope. The weight of it was undeniable. More than paper, more than money. It felt like possibility. His fingers brushed against it cautiously, as if it might vanish if he moved too quickly. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "Say nothing," Jonathan replied. "Just make it count. For yourself." That night, when Elias returned to his modest apartment, he set the envelope on the table and stared at it for a long time. For years he had dreamed of opening an art studio, a place not just to paint, but to teach, to create, to live surrounded by the colors he loved. But the dream had always been locked away behind the walls of financial struggle. Now, with this single gesture, the walls had crumbled. Within weeks, the dream began to take shape. Elias rented a small corner shop in a quiet neighborhood. The windows were dusty, the walls chipped, but he saw potential in every imperfection. He cleaned, painted, and filled the space with easels, brushes, and canvases. He gave it a name simple but true, the Atelier. The first days were slow. A curious neighbor peered in, a retired woman asked about portraits. 2 teenagers signed up for a Saturday watercolor class. But gradually, word spread. People came, not just to learn painting, but to find something gentler than the world outside. Elias welcomed them all, his hand steady, his heart fuller than it had ever been. He never forgot the moment that had made it possible, the pale woman by the roadside, her fleeting presence that had led him to Lily. He didn't speak of it to anyone, not even when asked where his inspiration came from. He kept it quietly inside, translating it instead into his art. On the walls of the Atelier, a series of paintings emerged, each one exploring light breaking through shadow, each one carrying a silent echo of that night. Meanwhile, life in the Whitaker household slowly stitched itself back together. Lily's laughter returned to the halls. Her fearless steps regained their rhythm. Jonathan, though still carrying the grief of Emily's absence, seemed lighter, as though the safe return of his daughter had given him permission to breathe again. They found new rituals, family dinners in the garden, quiet evenings by the fireplace, afternoons walking Max through the manicured lawns. The house, once weighed down by sorrow, learned to echo with joy again. Months later, Jonathan visited Elias at the Atelier. He stepped inside quietly, his polished shoes looking almost out of place on the paint-splattered floor. On the wall hung a canvas unlike the others, a soft figure rendered not with sharp lines, but with light, pale, calm, guiding. It wasn't a portrait in the strict sense, but Jonathan recognized her instantly. "Emily," he whispered. Elias turned, brushes still in his hand. "It's not her face exactly. It's what I felt that night, what I think she wanted me to see." Jonathan's eyes lingered on the canvas. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Jonathan placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "Sometimes, the people we love find a way to keep protecting us. You gave me my daughter back. Maybe she gave you this." Elias nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The months rolled into years, and the atelier flourished. Elias taught children to paint skies filled with impossible colors, helped adults rediscover dreams they had abandoned, and filled his own canvases with images of light and hope. Every brushstroke was a quiet prayer of gratitude for the chance he had been given, for the path that had opened, for the life that had changed. The Whitakers visited often. Lily, growing taller each year, became his most enthusiastic student. She painted dogs with oversized ears, forests that seemed alive, and skies where the light always found a way through the trees. Her laughter filled the atelier like music, reminding Elias of the first moment he had found her, lost and small, by the roots of an oak. And through it all, Elias carried one truth close to his heart. The woman he had seen by the roadside hadn't been a ghost chained to the earth. She had appeared for one reason only, to guide him, to guide her daughter, to make sure that love won over loss. She hadn't stayed. She hadn't lingered. She had simply come when she was needed most. The rest, Lily's safety, Jonathan's gratitude, and Elias's new life, was the legacy she left behind. In time, people in the neighborhood came to know Elias not just as a painter, but as the man who had once saved a girl in the woods. He never sought the attention. He never told the full story. To him, the greatest reward was the studio itself, the colors on canvas, and the community that had grown around his dream. One evening, as he locked up the atelier and looked through the glass at the rows of paintings, Elias caught his reflection in the window. For a split second, he thought he saw another figure beside him, a woman, faint, serene, watching. He didn't flinch. He only smiled softly and whispered into the night, "Thank you." And then he turned off the lights, stepped into the quiet street, and walked home, his heart certain that everything, somehow, had found its place. And now, I want to hear from you. What part of this story touched your heart the most? Tell me in the comments below. I'd love to read your thoughts. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this story, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, so you won't miss any of our next powerful and emotional stories. Because sometimes, behind every silence, there is a voice waiting to be heard.